Hello, lovelies. I'm having a bit of a day. I keep finding one thing, then losing another. So I had the book that I wanted to review today, and then I realised I didn't have my wallet, which I needed this morning. So I went to find my wallet. Eventually, I found my wallet. Came back, couldn't find the book. So I put the wallet down. I went looking for the book again. Found the book, but lost my phone, which I also needed. I don't know how this happens. Apparently the world has decreed that I only have one inventory slot today. So, bonus content, because I wasn't sure whether I would re-find the book again after losing it for a second time. This is a sort of a dice roller that I bought on a whim from a trashy online store. It comes in a very, very nice box, but it's very hard to remove from it. Do I have anything I can use for leverage? Yes, yes I do. A strange claw-shaped thing on my wallet chain. See, they do have a use. There we go. Levered it out. So yeah, running a lot of games online, despite loving dice, it can be a bit noisy and tricky, and dice take up a lot of table real estate. So on a whim, I got one of these dice roller things that use wheels instead. So it's very solidly built. It has two dials, one for D20, D10 and D8, one for D12, D6 and D4. I think they're missing a trick here, because you could clearly put a whole bunch of different number gradients on here outside of the possibilities of dice, but hey ho, there you go. It will lay flat, and to roll the dice you just spin, and then if you run out of patience you can stop it. Alright, then you've got a little marker that says on a D20 that would have been a 9, on a D10 that would have been a 1, and on a D8, which unfortunately is slightly hard to see because of the cogs and stuff in the way, would have been a 3. Alright, and the same goes for the other side. Anyway, I was surprised how nicely built this was, and you know, very nice box. We love a good box. It might be worth it to some of you. The only thing I'd say is that if you don't stop it, it does spin for a very long time. It could have done with like a clicker or something, and the innermost dice can be hard to read unless you've got a lot of diffuse lighting around, so you may end up having to tilt it to see what the fuck is going on. But yeah, so much for the filler. I did find the book eventually, and that was this book, which is Outgunned Adventure. I mistakenly thought this was just a supplement for Outgunned, and I was curious how they would attack a genre or a subgenre or whatever else, give them more space than they had in the Action Flicks supplement, which I also reviewed recently. So you can check out the Action Flicks reviews and the Outgunned review if you want a more detailed examination of those, and if you want a more detailed examination of the system. But yeah, I was labouring under a misapprehension. This is surprisingly actually a standalone game book, but it could be combined with Outgunned and the Action Flicks books to expand out the game. At least some elements anyway. There are parts of these other games that are usable. There are other parts which aren't. GM discretion is advised. Should a book like this be a standalone? Probably not. You should probably try and drive people towards your core book via its expansions. You will normally tend to make more sales that way. But then, if this is technically a core book, will its sales be better than the Outgunned book? Don't know. It wasn't that obvious it was a standalone until I got it, which may just be me being tarded when looking at the website, but still, now you know for certain. why do I keep buying these? You know, I'm not sure. I think it's because Outgunned was kind of sold to me as an inheritor of Feng Shui's crown. To me, Feng Shui is the pinnacle of cinematic action role-playing. And Outgunned is not that. But I'm always interested in new games, new systems, and particularly in genre emulation. So it was worth it to me to have a look at that regardless. As a book, this feels better, more focused. I think the original Outgunned core book was a little bit diffused because it was trying to take in all action movies, which is fair enough to the extent that it's fair enough. But this one is very much zeroed in on a particular sort of action-adventure game. Heavily referencing the Mummy series, but also obviously Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, Uncharted, and a whole host of other material that exists in that sort of Indiana Jones orbit. It's also heavily focused on the interwar years, 1920 through 1940. So, also a good period if you want to do this more action-oriented Cthulhu sort of game. You do find a lot of analogues or rip-offs of characters from the source media, but they've been given that sort of veneer or interpretation, either gamifying or shifting them into the correct period. Right? Some of them have obvious names and things that make it obvious who they're referencing, others don't, but are more obvious in other ways. If with me just flicking through the archetypes here, you can probably get an idea of who most of these are supposed to reference. Yeah. All in good fun. I did something similar with Agents of Swing, where I created analogues of all the Spy-Fi characters I could find or think of, so that people could just pick up and play, playing to an archetype and a character that they were already familiar with. So, you know, that's a lot of fun, and I don't mind example characters. Yeah, here's the pulp version of Lara Croft. Why she would choose Mausers and not Colt 45s, I don't know, but here we are. Maybe she's closer to World War One than World War Two in this, judging from her get-up. But who knows? The art, as you've been able to see, I think, is good. It is also gratifyingly unafraid of cleavage, but also not exploitative, which is a shame. And it's not against showing heroes doing heroic stuff, right? And action scenes. You'll see characters throwing punches, firing guns, leaping over things, stuff like that, right? And that's refreshing compared to a lot of other games. I may revisit this in a bit. Right, that's it. There's stuff going on here. Cars crashing, guns being fired, people fleeing, a motorcycle. There's stuff going on. You're like, oh, okay, I can see what I'm getting into here, which you don't get, unfortunately, with a lot of other games. My criticisms system-wise are pretty much the same as in my existing Outgunned review. This is a low-fidelity system, and its dice system is quite opaque. When I say it's a low-fidelity system, I mean the exact gear that you have doesn't make very much difference. And that can be unsatisfying for gunheads who play action games. They tend to prefer for their gear to make a difference and to be a meaningful choice. I mean, if John Wick went to be outfitted in these games, then it wouldn't matter which pistol or shotgun or rifle or whatever he was choosing. You know, they all have the same stats, so it would become a meaningless sort of scene here. Expressive only in terms of roleplay, which is fine, but as I say, most people seem to want their choices to be meaningful and that can be a problem in low fidelity systems, though it does fit the genre emulation. Yeah, most people feel like there should be a difference between popping off shots with my break action 455 Webley and laying down a barrage of fire with a Browning high power in each fist, but that's just really not going to be the case in this game. And that's fine if you don't care about it. Personally, I don't much care about it, but I know players, and they will want these things to make a difference. As I said, the other main criticism I have is that the dice system isn't especially intuitive, and so figuring out how good you are at something and gauging threat levels of enemies is rather opaque beyond number go up. Since this is more of a setting book, the system criticisms aren't as relevant, but because it's a standalone book, it is relevant. So if you've already got Outgunned, then you don't need to, you know the system. If you don't have it, it's a brief overview, go and look at my full review. If this were a pure setting book, if this were a pure setting book, this is more the sort of book that I would want. I found the action flicks books to be very unsatisfying because they just didn't spend enough time and dwell long enough on any of the setting sort of dressing rules and insights and so on. They're about as satisfying as half a blowjob with a dry mouth. I mean, it's still a BJ, but I didn't get to finish. And how do you ask a pharmacist for chapstick suitable for use on a foreskin? It's not easy. But this is much better and more fully featured than what we have in the action flicks, especially if combined with the material from the other books, the main core book and the action flicks books. There's good stuff on traps and puzzles for ancient temples, which is well suited to our genre here. And there's a great section on supernatural threats, which is portable between all the different sort of possible settings of Outgunned. There are some settings in the action flicks that are more supernatural settings or hunter-based settings, so you could hodgepodge a lot of stuff together. I mean, it ain't GURPS, but it's nice to have all of those options available, especially for bad guys. A lot of the GM guidance is transferable to other games, so even though that's a rather short chapter and a lot of it is a bit of a retread, it might be worth it for other people to check out, even if they're not going to play Outgunned and they're just interested in sort of pulp heroic games. There is good genre-focused advice for creating adventures for this genre, applying treasure in games where money is often a bit of an abstract. Also some rules for rivals, proper, equal enemies. Heat when you're being pursued and caught up with and attacked or arrested. Making camp and so on. It's all good stuff. It's got a light touch which is suitable for the genre, so that's okay for this kind of game. Sample adventures, as we all know from regularly watching this channel, I could live without. Feels like a waste of space. Scores then. Style-wise, I'm giving it a high 4. I am a sucker for some of the sketchbook style art that they have in here. I'm a cheap date when it comes to sketchbook art. I love the pastiches of familiar characters from other media. The layout is nice and clean, but engaging. It is coloured, it does have texture, but it doesn't get in the way of the text. It was an easy read, it didn't exhaust my eyes, and everything was readable. Which sounds like a low bar, but in the RPG industry it isn't, and I'm as guilty as anyone of making those sorts of problems. And it's not afraid of cleavage, and it actually shows action scenes, as I said, which makes a nice change from the kind of pastel blob, catalogue pose, DreamWorks smirk sort of looking art that we've gotten used to from people like Wizards of the Coast. Substance-wise, if this was just a source book rather than a standalone game, I would give it a 4 in terms of substance. However, as things stand, with it being a standalone game, I give it a 3. Reiterating the rules in what amounts to a setting book feels like a bit of a waste of time and effort, and it cost the book a bunch of space that could have gone into an expanded primer on the interwar world, geography, politics, ideas for lost worlds, lost countries, lost temples, more sample characters, more enemies, more traps, etc. Or they could have just cut the length of the book and charged a lot less for it, which also would have been nice. But it does show that Two Little Mice, the company behind it, are capable of doing more fulsome supplements that actually satisfy you somewhat. You know, if Action Flix is a dry, half-hearted blowjob, this is a full-on, sloppy-mouthed ball wrangler. Why I settled on that as a metaphor for describing things today, I don't know, but I did, and we're all going to have to live with it. So yeah, all things considered then, 7 out of 10, 3.5 out of 5. Remember, I used the full scale, 1 to 5, 3 is average. So this is above average, and it would be a 4 if it were a standalone support book. I would buy this if Outgunned itself didn't appeal, but you like pulpy action adventure. Of course, no swastikas allowed. I would buy this if you were disappointed in the collapse of the Tomb Raider RPG project, but especially if you were also horrified at what Evil Hat was going to do to our girl. This might be a great option as a substitute for that if you were looking forward to it. I would say also buy this if you're curious about whether Two Little Mice are capable of producing a fully featured game setting. Right? So there's some good reasons to buy if the kind of criticisms that I've given of the book and the system sound like things that particularly bug you, though. Yeah, avoid it. So yeah, it's an above average score. Overall, I like the Outgunned material. I'm not sure about the system. I probably won't be buying any more Outgunned material now that my curiosity has been satisfied. It ain't a Feng Shui substitute, and I'll likely not get to play it much. So unless a setting book comes out that's something I can't live without, I think I have enough now. Your mileage may of course vary. Quickly then, just to finish up, build quality, hardback, nice, ribbon, nice, glossy pages, but not too glossy, and the ink didn't run, and it's been very hot, and I had very sweaty fingers, so that's a good thing. And how many pages are we talking? Somewhere in the region of 250, 260 pages. There you go. I will see you all tomorrow for comments and the Week in Geek, and I'll see you all soon. Hopefully some release news soon from me, but I don't want to jinx it. Zang.
In his house in R'lyeh, great Cthulhu lies dreaming, and when he awakens, he shall have the morning wood of aeons. Call of Cthulhu is a deeply pornographic card game. Enjoy your tentacles.